Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 10 of the Elliot Loney Podcast. Today I caught up with my good friend Lewis Spears and we discussed all things comedy, and it's an absolute beauty. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. Make sure you click the bell and subscribe if you haven't done so already to stay notified every time I do go live. And this is how the chat went down. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are, and we are joined by a very special guest, a man I've known for an extremely long period of time, one of Australia's most prolific stand-up comedians. Please put your hands together for Mr. Lewis Spears.
Oh, thank you very much, mate. What a lovely intro. Happy to be on the show. It's great. We have known each other for too long, huh?
Have you ever seen me more professional in your whole life?
Never. The Elliot Loney Podcast is long overdue. I've been telling you to do one for ages. It's good.
You have, man. I'm finally on the train, so to speak. So, mate, what have you been up to? What have you been doing in isolation? How's things going for you?
Dude, I isolated myself. But because I've been paranoid about this shit. I saw it coming. I isolated myself before the first isolation in Melbourne, like 3 weeks before. So I haven't left the house in 2020. So I've just been like keeping myself busy. I don't know. It's like, it sucks with the tours being canceled was the worst thing because I had so much planned. I was going to do a big tour. We had England, like the UK locked in. And now it looks like I don't think there's going to be shows back until like June next year. It sucks, but just trying to stay busy making online content, really.
Well, it's especially important for you to be very cautious with this whole COVID-19 stuff because you suffer from asthma, right? You've had asthma for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not fucking around with it. I've got a mask. I've been wearing a mask for months. I got one ages ago. It's funny. Like going from everyone used to stare at me like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Some paranoid freak. And now I'm noticing everyone's wearing a mask now in Victoria, at least.
Absolutely. Especially in Frankston, I would assume.
Oh yeah. Well, they're mostly balaclavas
that's
for robbing stores. You know, I think that's why I'm getting a lot of looks down in Frankston. I put on because I got a big black one, so I put that on, and I'm fucking massive. I intimidate people anyway. When I'm wearing a mask, people think I'm about to, do a ram raid.
You're an ominous looking bloke. You're about 7'9", so it's quite scary. But I guess I'm really excited to have you on because obviously we've known each other since we both started in comedy, and I've watched your journey. Yeah. It's been inspirational to say the least. You're closing in on 500,000 YouTube subscribers. You've got, so many millions of people that have viewed your videos. You've done tours around Australia. You've sold out shows everywhere. So that's where you are now. But before we get there, I want to talk about your formative years and what it was like for you growing up, what your life was like in high school. And, did you always want to be a comedian? Is that always what you wanted to do? Or was there something else that you...
Yeah. No, I always knew. My mum loved comedy, and so I was like around it all the time. She loved watching funny shit on TV and stand up especially. So I literally know the moment I decided I wanted to do it. I would have been like, I used to think I was 12, but I might even have been like 10, 11, 12. I can't remember. Mum took me to the Lano and Woodley's farewell show. And it was like at the time, the last time they were going to be performing together. They were together for like 20 years and they did this huge show, and I loved them from watching them on TV and shit. So that was the first comedy show I saw. And I just fell in love with not only them like performing and what they were doing. I loved that, but I also got sucked in by the connection they had with their audience because it was their last ever show. So people showed up and they were like real fans, and they were like really happy but really sad, and it was like this big farewell thing. And I think what really got me was them having like that unique connection with their audience, and that's what I really chased as well as stand up, which is why I think I fell into the online thing, because now that's the best way to get that connection with the people who like what you do is online.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned those guys because I think, was it Lano? We saw Woodley. We saw one of them, I think, at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival when we were both starting out. And I remember thinking, this is incredible. And it's funny because he did have that connection with his audience. And I remember sitting there going, holy cow, this is something else.
Yeah. They're like the best. And they just recently reunited, and I got to I got to see their reunion show. And it was even bigger. And I remember sitting, it was like a full circle thing, I remember, because that was the second time I'd ever seen them was, you know, when I'm 25 and like comedy is literally my job, and I'm sitting there watching them do their reunion thing. And I'm like, fuck, man, this is literally why I started it. And now I'm back here and I'm doing it. It was really cool.
That's so cool. Now, obviously, comedy, and I've faced this myself, I guess, in terms of like, it's not a very traditional pathway. And someone like yourself who's always known that that's what he wanted to do with his life since you were a kid, that's like the tunnel vision, you know, zenith. So when you were telling people that, or when you were communicating that to other people during your high school days, did you face any kickback or anything like that? Was anyone kind of like, you know, you wasting your time? Or was everyone really supportive and going, you know, mate, go for it sort of thing?
I got it a lot from teachers. I was a fucking menace at school. I had so many teachers. I had a few teachers tell me that like I wouldn't amount to anything, which is a weird thing to tell a child.
Yeah.
I remember one time my high school PE teacher, I was always fucking around with PE because I just didn't like sport, which was always disappointing to people when they saw like the tallest teenager they've ever seen was like, basketball? Nah, that sucks. No, thank you. No, I don't want to be a ruckman. That sounds boring. But like, I remember my PE teacher was goofing off, and then after the class, in hindsight, really mean thing to say to a child. He goes, "You know, Lewis, if you were my son, I would be disappointed in you." And I said, "Well, if you were my dad, I'd be disappointed in you." And I think I won that one. So I think I got a lot of pushback from teachers, but like, I think people who really knew me, like friends and stuff, I don't know if they knew that I would do it, but they didn't really tell me that I couldn't do it. It was just like, I suppose authority figures in my life were like, "Oh, I don't know about that."
So when was the moment where you were like, okay, like, can you remember the moment where you first posted your first video that got a whole lot of traction, and you thought, okay, I'm on the right path now. The railway is set.
Yeah. So like when I started like 2012, we were doing like stunts and publicity shit and hoaxes and controversies, which was just fun for me, because that's what I enjoyed doing in my personal life and in my personal time. So that was like fun. But when I think it was when I went solo and I posted like my first Ping a Pete video, because I went solo and there was this big scary moment of like, oh fuck, I'm solo, I'm not in this group anymore. Can I actually do this shit by myself? And can I be funny without causing controversy or publicity stunts? And then I put out like that Ping a Pete, the police are planning a party video. And I put that out. I didn't really think anything of it. I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty good. And then I woke up and this was back when Facebook didn't even tell you how many views a video had. But looking at like the likes and shares, I would think that it hit like 500,000 to 1 million in the first week. And that was when I was like, oh fuck, people really like this. I think I can do this shit. I can write a funny video and do that.
That was a hilarious video, by the way. I remember one of my mates who had no affiliation to you whatsoever sent that to a group chat that I was in. It was like, check this video out. And I was like, bro, I'm mates with the guy, bro. I know the guy.
Yeah, that was the first one. That was like really like Melbourne Viral, because that was all about like Melbourne nightclubs and the police were playing an ad at that time. So that was like really localized viral, which was really cool. And that was like my first proper one. And I'm happy that one still holds up. It's very rare that you put out a video that goes well at the time that is funny even like a month later, but that one keeps getting like mentioned. And that's like, I've only managed to do that a few times where you make something and people reference it a few years later. It's very rare with online stuff. You normally get forgotten.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt. So let's move forward a little bit now and talk about some of the things I was mentioning before about how much you've actually achieved in such a short amount of time in terms of your following, the amount of people that have viewed your stuff, the amount of sold out shows you've done, how many stand-up tours you've now done.
Too kind, mate.
you know,
You're trying to fuck me after this.
Yeah, mate. Present your Johnson, you dirty little bastard. But, you know,
I would have to say, saying to another man, present your Johnson is the straightest way to get a look at another guy's cock, for sure. I'd say that's not gay at all. Present your Johnson.
Oh, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's all about how you say it, isn't it? Intent is the key. Yeah. Because my intent is for you to present it, not to suck it, but to present it. So, you know, talk us through a little bit about that, because, you know, you've done so much. What's a little bit of advice you could give to other people, because you have been successful in doing so? What would you say to a comedian or aspiring comedians watching this right now, trying to grow their brand online? What's the first thing that you would tell them? A pearl of wisdom.
Well, my first thing would be get online. Like, it's when I started, online was very much the future. Like the only person before me who had done it was Alex Williamson. And before him, I can't think of anybody. So he really paved the way for all of us. I truly think that. But now, when I was doing it, it was the future, and there was so much pushback from the industry. Now it's like you're almost late if you're not online. So the online thing is absolutely key. And honestly, it's just being consistent. Like the biggest difference between someone who made it and someone who didn't, it's very rarely like skill or how good they are. It's like who kept doing it and who didn't stop is really the key thing. So for me, especially with the online, it's just consistency. You have to be uploading once a week. If you're doing a podcast, it has to come out when you say it comes out. And I used to be terrible at this. I went through like my first 3 or 4 years, really. I was super inconsistent. I would have a viral video here, and then I wouldn't upload anything for weeks. And the minute I actually knuckled down and was like, okay, this shit isn't working, but it has the potential to. The minute I sat down and was like, I am not going to go a week without posting a video, that's when I really started to blow up. So it's all consistency. And I imagine that's true with fucking anything, really.
Well, it's interesting you say consistency is one of the most important things, because, and I'm not just saying this to pump your tires up, because I know you referenced that before, but you are, I think it goes without saying, one of the hardest working comedians in the country. And you only have to look at your body of work to understand that, because, you know, you not only have talent, but like I, for example, have taken big hiatuses from uploading online, and I've had momentum and then I've stopped uploading, and I've seen firsthand the repercussions of that. But then I look at someone like you, who's also talented, but you have had that consistency and you have brought that time in and day out. And when you look at your brand online, especially on YouTube, it's clearly paid dividends for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was always my worst habit was like doing a video and then not doing it for ages, or doing okay for 3 weeks and then fucking up that last week of the month and then trying to start again and pick up. And it's like, it came down to like, I understood that it's like, you can be the best. It's like you can be the best guitar player in the world. There are so many dudes that are incredible at guitar, but if they can't like hustle and build an audience of people that want to hear them play, they will only forever just be that guy who's really good at guitar in their bedroom. You know, like it's especially with the online thing, you can't rely on industry anymore. You have to do it yourself. If you rely on industry, you're giving somebody else the ability to make or break you, or just say, oh, you'll make it in 3 years when the guy above you retires, and then maybe the guy above you never retires, or someone else comes up. It's like, that's why I like the internet, and that's why I tell all comedians, musicians, whatever, to get on there, because you really, really can make it. And it's, everything is your fault. Your success, your failures, it's all you. So like, you know, if you fuck up, you can take ownership of it and you can fix it. Or you can work out what you're doing wrong or what you're doing right and improve upon that. Whereas when you're in these other worlds, because I've done radio, when you're in these other worlds, sometimes you're really good and you just won't progress because the guy above you has a contract that goes for 3 years and that's it.
Mm.
and then you're fucked.
Yeah. Well, going back to what you were saying before about motivation, it's like I'm interested in that because that's something I think a lot of people struggle with, including myself sometimes. So, how have you
Yeah.
been able to build that motivation and stay so consistent? What's a little bit of advice you could give on that note?
Well, for for me, it's like motivation is weird because it's like it's essentially an emotion, and those are just unreliable. Like no one's happy all the time, no one's sad all the time, no one's angry all the time. It's like all emotions are just by their nature fleeting. Um, and I think motivation is more of a feeling or an emotion than like something that you can make stay. So for me, habit, routine, and just doing it anyway is a really important thing. Like so often I'm like, I don't want to do this, I don't feel like it, this, that, and I'm like, just do it anyway. But in terms of like why I'm motivated, that being said, what motivates me is like, you know, I didn't come from money. My parents never had money. We came up without much. We weren't destitute or anything, but we never really had much. And what I always saw was my parents working so hard to get what little we did have. And my mum always instilled that idea of hard work into me, like hard work and consistency and just the idea that uh, sometimes like a lot of things are just hard and they always will be. And you have to push through that and figure out how to do it anyway. And then it's like a mixture of that idea of wanting to be the best and wanting to be a really, really good comedian and wanting to follow in the path of the greats, but also I've like had full-time jobs. I've gone out into the workforce. I've had a job since I was like 14 and 9 months. And then I moved into full-time work. I didn't go to uni. I did like call center jobs to like try and fund the comedy that I was doing. And they made me sad. So like, I just felt really, really sad doing these other jobs, these unfulfilling jobs. And obviously this won't be for everyone. There's nothing wrong with having a job, but for me, it made me really sad. And I remember like getting on the train in the morning and I would look at another guy who was like 40 and I would look at him going to work to get there at 9 a.m. in the office. And then I would look at me going at 9 a.m. to get into the office. And I would literally go in my head, the only difference between me and this guy is time. Like I could very well end up like that. And that's not to shit on people who have jobs. That's just for me. I knew that would make me sad. So I'm motivated by two things, like the desire to do comedy and the desire to become great and the desire to be the best comedian that I can be. But also that I feel like I'm perpetually running away from that other lifestyle that made me sad, that I know that at any moment could come back. If I stop doing this and comedy fails because I stop, I got to pay rent somehow and it'll be back to the job. So it's like running towards this and running away from that for me.
It's fantastic to hear you talk about that too, because I think a lot of people that I speak to and I've spoken to throughout my life who hate what they do, but they're too scared to try anything different. And I think a lot of the times it's having the courage to not only back yourself, but put your happiness before anything else. Because I think if you're passionate about something and it makes you happy, then the results will come. And it's clearly evident with you by the way you go about it.
So true. It's so true. Like if you love it and you do it all the time, because you can love it and you can do it sometimes and it won't pay off. But if you love it and you really do it and you really work it and you treat it like a business, it should just work. And for me, it was always like, I'm not making millions of dollars. I'm not killing it. But I know that if I am never more successful than what I am today, if this is it, this is amazing. Like I can pay rent, I can buy a t-shirt every now and then, and I could maybe take a holiday once a year. That's where I'm at it now. And if this is it, that is to me so much better than being able to do all of those things, but I work much less and I'm at a full-time call center or office job or whatever that I would be doing. So a lot of the time it's like, yeah, you just got to put your happiness first. that's kind of what I did, because I knew that other shit made me sad in my soul.
It's funny because your passion for comedy has obviously taken you to crazy places in your life, and it's evident in terms of what you were discussing with me earlier about you're not really someone who was passionate about sport or had any other external interests. For you, it's always been this, and the passion is very much evident. And one of the things that you told me off air that I hope you don't mind me bringing up, I don't know if you would, but I remember
It better not be about the hookers. Don't say anything like that. Can't have that out there.
Told me when you went to America, you got to hang out backstage with Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
So an experience like that, because tell me about that, because an experience like that where you've come from where you've come from, as you said, you weren't growing up wealthy, you weren't necessarily privileged in any way, and you've worked your ass off and you've dismissed anyone who's talked negatively about you, and you've just used your fandom and used the people that are rallying behind you to build your career up. And then all of a sudden you're backstage, Comedy Store in LA, one of the biggest comedy rooms in the world, with essentially the biggest, most popular comedian and spokesperson of our time. So like, was that a moment where you were like,
yeah, that was like fucking crazy, because obviously that wasn't planned at all. So like, I'll tell you the short version of it. So I had been planning this America trip for like a year, because for me, I picture myself moving to America and making it there, mainly because there's so many more comedy rooms, and I just want to be the best stand-up comedian that I can be. And to do that, you just need heaps of stage time. And like, for context, in Melbourne, where I live, we have one comedy club. In New York, they literally have almost 100. So if you want to get good, you got to practice. It'd be like, if you want to be a good swimmer, you got to be near a pool. Basically, you need to be in a country that has pools. So that's where I'm going for the pools. So, but that's at the time, that's what I thought. So I was like, well, I need to experience it, because maybe I'll get there and I'll hate it. It'd be stupid for me to work for 10 years and then get to a place and be like, oh, this sucks. Actually, I wish I never put that time in. So I decided to go to New York for 2 weeks and then LA for 2 weeks, so I could experience both cities, because that's probably where you would end up. So I go to New York, and at that time I was talking to this comedian, Andrew Schultz, when he was like really blowing up. So we were going back and forth, like trading information and helping each other out. I would give him some tips, he would give me some tips. And this is before he's become like the giant thing that he is now. So we were doing that. So I met up with Andrew in New York, and we hung out and we went to a few comedy clubs, and I got to perform in New York, which was amazing. And then I told him I was going to LA and I didn't know anybody. So he hooked me up with a comedian called Andrew Santino, who's really good and I'm a big fan of. And so I'm texting Andrew, and so I'll say Santino. So I'm texting Santino, and then Schultz tells me, look, tell Santino you're going to LA and the dates, and he'll sort you out he'll hang out with you and get you to meet up with some people. And I was like, okay, cool. So I'm texting Santino. I go to LA and I shoot this little TV pilot, Spears vs. America, as well while I'm there. And then I have a week off. So I go, all right, what are you doing? And he goes, yeah, come, let's have lunch. I'm like, okay, cool. I have lunch with Santino, and it was great. And then I'm thinking, oh, that'll be it. Great. I met because Andrew Santino is a huge comedian in his own right. So I'm like, oh, that's awesome. What a cool connection. And then we just got along really well. And he's like, oh, I'm going to be at the Comedy Store tonight. You should come round. I'll show you around. And I'm like, holy fuck, the Comedy Store. Incredible. So I'm like, okay, cool. And then I go to the Comedy Store, and he takes me in and he's like, hey, come backstage. I'm like, what the fuck? So he takes me backstage and he gives me this tour of the store. And it's like, it's the coolest fucking place I've ever been. It's like the walls are like covered with headshots of comedians that have been dead for 50 years that inspired the Jerry Seinfelds and they're all signed. And there's like, it's crazy. It's like, it's one building, but there are 3 stages in there, 4, I think. So there's like one small 60-seater, one massive 500, one 150, and all these other rooms and tunnels and secret places that Santino's taking me through. And he introduces me to a few other people. I meet fucking Neil Brennan, who wrote for the Dave Chappelle show. all these other people. And then we're hanging out at this secret bar, and he goes, "Oh, by the way, I'm doing Joe Rogan's show at the Comedy Store." And I was like, "Oh, that's amazing. I'll stick around and watch your set." And he goes, "Nah, man, come backstage. I'll introduce you." And I'm like, "What the fuck? All right." So I'm trying to play it cool. And then, he takes me backstage, and I hung out with Joe Rogan for like an hour, just talking with him. And he is such a lovely person. Everyone asks me what he's like. He is literally, I've never met anyone that is so like themselves on camera as him. Like, I was talking to him, and I almost got this feeling of like, I'm listening to the podcast, because he is exactly who he is. Like, we're talking about drugs and monkeys and LSD and shit. Like, that's literally what we spoke about. And he was really, really lovely. And I was just I didn't get a photo. I was trying not to be that guy. So I didn't get a photo. I didn't act weird. I didn't tell him, "Oh, you should check out my stuff. You should look at this." I just talked to him like a normal person. And then the show finished and I left. And then somehow I must have made an impression on him, because apparently he was asking around about me to all of these other comedians that he knows, and like talking to the Comics Lounge here in Melbourne about me, which I didn't expect. I would have thought that he'd meet thousands of people every day, so he wouldn't remember me. But apparently he did, which is cool.
I think one of the reasons would be because you were so relaxed and cool. And I think in terms of just having a genuine, candid conversation with him, I think that would have been quite endearing to someone like Joe Rogan, who's probably used to people, bowing to him, treating him differently because he is such a big name. So I think, that's essentially like, I mean, I know people who are famous as well, and they're all essentially just people. They just normal.
Yes.
And so it's like, the more, I guess you can just have a human heart-to-heart conversation with them, the more they respect you.
I think so. And like, that was not that either of us are on any comparable level to Joe Rogan, but like, that's always what you do appreciate when you have a bit of a profile and you meet people. It's always nice to have a real chat with the people who just want to talk, rather than people who come up to you and be like, "Oh, it's the Elliot Loney." It's like, it's almost like that puts up a barrier between you and the person. But if you can just treat them like a normal human, have a bit of a chat, and then just let it end naturally, I think that, I guess, does make an impression, which I didn't really realize I was doing at the time. But I just didn't want to be, because, I was really representing Andrew Schultz as well, and then also Andrew Santino by meeting Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
If I was a weird cunt, they wouldn't have me around, and then I would just blow. If I blew it with Joe, I'd blow it with Santino and blow it with Schultz. So I was like, I must be normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was crazy to like, to me, that like prove that they're not fucking kidding when they call it the land of opportunity. Like, I was there for literally 2 weeks, and I'm in the room with the biggest comedian on the planet.
Yeah. And, it's cool the way that you treated that situation is exactly how I would have handled it. I think, because you are sort of a down to earth kind of guy, and I like to think of myself the same way. If I ever had the opportunity to meet someone like Joe, after doing a comedy set or even being in a comedy venue like that, I would handle this situation the exact same way. So, credit to you, man. And it's funny that what you mentioned about the land of opportunity in the US. I mean, I was actually talking to someone about this recently off air. I've been doing so much stuff in the tennis space with my comedy, because I'm marrying up the two things I love, tennis and comedy. And I've been given opportunities with the USTA and with the US Open and with the US
to
do some stuff over there. And obviously I've done some stuff with John McEnroe, who's a really big name in tennis. He's been in Adam Sandler movies and stuff like that. He's a big name. And I've done stuff like that over there in the States with him. But I can't do anything with Tennis Australia in my own backyard. And I've been trying for years. So it's funny. They seem to be more liberal with, giving opportunity to up and coming people over there in the States than they are here.
That would have to be the biggest difference that I noticed from only spending a month in the States, like 2 weeks New York, 2 weeks LA, was just how open the people there were to different ways of succeeding. Whereas in Australia, and especially because I feel like I was part of that first wave of online comedians, the amount of backlash from just everyone in the comedy industry was fucking crazy. It was like in Australia, it seems like people are, I think this is changing a little bit, but it seems like there's really like, there are rules here of how you succeed, and you're not allowed, if you succeed outside of this system that we've built and we control, we won't let you in because you broke the rules. It feels very much like that, and it seems to be across industries. Like me talking to, because I know a lot of Australian rappers, people like Cursor, who have come outside the industry, the amount of pushback that they've gotten from people within it and disrespect is really interesting, and you don't seem to see that in America, which is interesting.
Yeah, no doubt at all. And in terms of, for someone like you who's on the forefront of comedy right now, you've been doing it for a long time, what do you see as the biggest threat to comedians at the moment?
In Australia, I think that the biggest threat is like, it's not so much a threat because they're not like harming comedy, but they are, all of these networks and ABC and all these government bodies and all these, even the mainstream ones as well. It's like they don't want to do real comedy. They want to do this box ticking shit, and it doesn't hurt comedy, but I think it really hinders it, and it hinders the type of comedy that people can actually make. Like if you want to make something with a budget, you have to go to one of these networks. Like it's very hard to create anything that needs a bit of money. If you need costumes, if you need sets, if you need a team to make something, you have to go to one of these networks because otherwise it's crazy expensive. And it seems like none of these networks want to make real comedy. Like comedy that I used to watch on TV, Australia, I think, is capable still today of making some of the funniest shit in the world. Like the Chasers War and everything is like clearly what molded me as a person, let alone as a fucking comedian. The Chasers War and everything, like Chris Lilly's early stuff, even shit like fucking Thank God You're Here was incredible. And you just don't see anything good at all being made on any of these networks. And it's because there's just so much control from the networks to the government bodies and even the management companies themselves that manage all of these comedians. They have like a vice grip over the industry, and nothing moves without their say. And that means if you don't play by their rules and you don't suck the right dicks and you don't wait in line, essentially, you're not going to be given an opportunity. And what they think they're doing is they're maintaining control of an industry. What they're really doing is they're strangling it to death. Because ABC Comedy, the entire channel, just got shut down. The whole channel. It wasn't like, oh, they made a few bad shows and the shows got canceled. It's like they literally were given an entire channel to fill, and they couldn't do it because they wouldn't try anything new or anything risky. Like that ABC especially, they don't have to make money. They don't have to appeal to advertisers or to politics. All they have to do is make good shows. That's it. And they want, obviously they're creating comedy. They want to attract a new young market. They want to attract young people. They want to figure out how to get young people to watch television or to watch ABC iView without spending heaps of money. If I'm in charge of that channel, I would look at all of us, like the fucking literally under 10 people, and be like, okay, I need to make something that appeals to young people without spending much money. Maybe I should go and talk to the cunt who's been doing it from his bedroom since he was 18 with no money, who is currently smashing me on the ratings and the quality. Surely that's a conversation that's had, and someone says, no, fuck those guys. They came up without us. They broke the rules. We're going to give it to this cunt who can't even make a grandmother laugh.
That would require logic.
Yeah. So it's weird. It's not like a threat to comedy, but it's like, it seems weird to me that none of us are getting opportunities. And I'm not even talking about me. I'm talking about Frenchie, you, Neil Kolhatka, Luke. Like there are so many of us, Alex Williamson, that are capable of making really funny stuff if we were given the budget, and we could all do TV, we could all do radio, we could all do this, that. Not a single one of us have been given a single like meaningful opportunity to create something that we own. And I think it's because we didn't come up the approved way, which is waiting in line.
Well, that's a fantastic answer, and I obviously share your views very, very much so. I think it's, I almost feel in a way, and I don't know if you share this same sentiment, but comedians here, maybe some of us, are almost like canaries in the coal mines. It's like they almost need to let us fly and give us a little bit of creative license, or at least try it, even in a pilot form, just so that they can see that we're capable of this and the people want it. There's a real thirst in the community for it. So I share that sentiment of yours very deeply. Now, tell me about, just a quick one before we move on to where you'd like to be in 10 years or 20 years' time. Tell us about the best experience you've ever had as a stand-up comedian.
Man, it's got to be like, the best experience I ever had was when I crowdfunded my first stand-up comedy special. And for those of you who don't know, it goes back to what I was saying. I had this big online audience, and I was getting really good at stand-up, and I knew that it was the right time in my career for a stand-up comedy special. So I go to all of these networks, and I go to all of these online platforms, and I go to ABC Comedy, this, that, government bodies. And I go, I've got, I have this, and I know I can do a show. I've been touring it all around, and they all said no. They said, no, it's too offensive. We can't fund this or we can fund it, but you need to change it in these ways. And I was like, fuck this. I'm doing a crowdfund, because, me and my crowd, we built this together. We can do this next step together too. So then I crowdfunded it. We raised a bunch of money, and then I did the shows, and it was the first taping at the end of the show, because I'm so stressed, and it's so important, the most important thing I've ever done still to this day in my career. And I finished the show, and then I get this standing ovation, and you can see it in the thing. I cry. Because I wasn't expecting it. It was like this everything just hit me of like the years and years of work I've put in. It fucking worked. It felt like it really paid off. And not only did I do it, but I did it well. And it was like that very, very rare moment of that you hardly ever get of like, oh, I could not have done that better. Like I fucking really nailed that shit. And that, like, doesn't happen very often at all. But yeah, that's it for me.
I was there that night and I witnessed it. And I remember
you were too.
I actually got emotional watching you when you started to tear up, because as someone who's just been a mate, like, subjectively, comedy aside, objectively, comedy aside, I looked at you and I was like, man, like, this guy's come so far, and he started himself, and there's all these people in this huge 2-tiered theater when I was up in the stalls, and I was like, man, like, this is so inspirational. So, it must have been a really moving experience, and I can understand why it meant so much to you, because unlike a lot of people there, not only did I witness the journey from afar, I kind of experienced it with you, because we'd done a lot of this, fundamentals, like going to open mic nights together and growing together in those formative stages.
Well, man, yeah, you were there like before I started stand up at all. Like I remember before my first ever gig, we went to like a gym that you were working at, and you gave me a microphone and an amp, just because you knew that the number one thing people fuck up is they don't know how to use a microphone. Like, fuck the jokes. People don't know how to handle a mic because it's heavy and you hear yourself in the speakers. So you were like, you need to hear yourself, how it sounds when you talk into a mic. And we both did our sets to a fucking empty gym the morning before we were going to do like my first ever comedy set. So like you literally were there from before day one.
Mm. Yeah, well, I mean, it's cool, man, because like I always knew you had a lot of potential, and I always knew you were super passionate and you had a lot of you know, natural aptitude for the craft. But to see that moment where you did break down on the stage and like the standing ovation and the, you know, just that actual being there and having come from that journey, it was really cool stuff. So I'm glad to hear you reference that moment, because I was sort of hoping that that would be, you know, the best.
Oh
Sort of.
yeah. It's like my future wife is going to be very disappointed because I doubt the wedding day is going to top that.
Well, you better give you a bloody standing ovation, mate. That's for damn sure.
I know.
So moving forward, in 10, 20 years time, ideally, where would Lewis Spears like to be? Where would you, in a perfect world, like to be?
Man, I would love to do what Jim Jefferies has done, like in a very different way, because obviously he came up before the internet was a big thing. But I would just love to be that guy from Australia who made it worldwide, doing his own thing. Because what I like about Jim was that, especially at first, like there's no fucking way you would put anything he was saying on TV ever. The shit that he was doing was hilarious and disgusting and crazy and wild for its time. But despite all of that, he still got there. And that's what I love about him. And that's what I would like to kind of achieve. I think that for me in the next 10 years, as long as the corona doesn't kill us all and international travel returns at some point, whenever that happens, I would love to just, if in 10 years I'm filling venues in a country that's not mine, no matter the size, that to me would be like crazy. So that's what I want to do. I see myself living in New York, performing stand up like multiple nights a week at clubs, and just being really, really good, and coming home to Australia to do a tour every year. That's what I want to do. I want to like blow up overseas and come home once a year and like do the homecoming tour of like, yeah, fuck yeah, that's that guy that made it in a different country after he made it here. So conquering Australia and then making progress in another country is really it for me.
Good on you, Lewis. I mean, that's that the stand-up side of things has always been something that obviously you're most passionate about. So I hope all of those dreams and aspirations for you come true, because you deserve it, man. You've been working hard and you honestly deserve it. So best of luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, I think we'll all get there. You as well.
Yeah,
I
well,
reckon, you know, we started together, bro. I think I really do feel like at this point it's just what I was saying. It's just a matter of not stopping. As long as we don't stop, I think it'll happen. It might not happen fast, but I reckon it'll happen.
that's it. And I think, you know, it's cool because I think we've spoken about this briefly on the phone before, but we all have, you know, our real passions for the craft of comedy, in terms of like, you love your stand-up. I love my project, the prestigious 9As, and like everyone seems to have their own personal passion project. So I guess if we all keep bringing each other up, being supportive of the community, being supportive of comedy as a whole, and just doing our thing, but supporting one another, I think, you know, we're all going to get there in the end. So,
well, that's it. Like that's the number one thing that I wanted to create, was because I had such a rough time in the industry when in my first years of so much pushback, and because I was so excited to break into this thing, and then I was just met with hostility and who the fuck is this, and he's breaking the rules, and from all these people that I looked up to, and I really wanted to be part of this thing, and they pushed me all out. I remember thinking like, that's the number one thing I will never do to anyone is make them feel like that if they're trying to make it in their own way. And I think that's what over the years we have managed to create, is like a really supportive online community where when I started, people acted like me selling one ticket takes one ticket away from them. You know, it's like me doing well takes food out of their mouth was the attitude. But I think what we have with all of the online boys that are doing well, and even the younger ones that are coming up now, like I love to see it. I think it's great. It's like, if you sell a ticket, I'm stoked for you. I think that's amazing. If your 9A's thing goes well, I think that's incredible. I wouldn't be thinking, oh, fuck, now my TV thing's not going to get picked up because fucking Elliot took this slot away from me. It's like, that's what I really hated about coming into this shit. And that's what I really love about what we've managed to build together is just this supportive thing of people who got pushed out by the rest of it. And I truly think, man, you give it 5 more years. Going to America was like stepping into Australia's future industry wise. You give it 5 years, we will be the mainstream. It's the online thing is it.
I'd just like to take this moment to address the people watching and listening to this right now. Be supportive of one another, because what Lewis is saying is 100% true. Do not be a fucking asshole. Just get around one another. Be supportive.
Yeah.
Find the people who are really trying to have a crack and just get around each other. There's no point in trying to bring each other down. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're trying to be a comedian, you're trying to succeed in this space, we're all in this together. So
yeah,
a good bloke or a good person, like how hard is it?
Don't be a shit cunt.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think on that note, thank you for listening. Thanks for watching. Lewis. And all the best with all your endeavors moving forward. I know you'll have a great career, and I look forward to chatting to you down the road.
Yeah, fuck yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Really enjoyed it. And yeah, 9A's, man. You're next.
Fingers crossed, man. We'll see. Crowdfund's coming. Thanks for listening, guys. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you very soon.